Welcome back to the program. Of course, if you're just joining us, this is Bottomline Africa. On this day, of course, it is Tuesday, the 30th day of January 2018, the day in which opposition leader Raila Odinga, of course, has taken that unofficial oath as the people's president in a ceremony held right in the capital, Nairobi. Well, if you thought this is an event that only took place right here in Nairobi, then you're wrong, because this is something that has happened in various other African countries before, and we have some infographics for you. Let's go through those details together. And we begin from our neighboring country, Uganda. Apparently in Uganda, the opposition leader there, Kizza Besigye, who was a perennial rival of President Yoweri Museveni, saw himself to office through a video shot from a secret location back in the year 2016, just a day before the inauguration of Mr. Museveni. He was arrested and charged with treason and has been attending mentions of his trial since then. Now that's Uganda. Let's now cross over to DRC, Congo. It was known as Zaire before. And Etienne Tshisekedi was the face of the opposition and President Mobutu Sese Seko's Zaire, later renamed DRC under Laurent Kabila, then Joseph Kabila. Similarity between Tshisekedi and Odinga is that both were once detained without trial, both served as prime ministers, and both boycotted presidential elections. Tshisekedi in 2006, of course, Raila in 2017. Over to the next country, and in November 2011, of course, Tshisekedi vied against the son of Laurent Kabila. Now, let's cross over to Nigeria, where Moshood Abiola declared himself president when Sani Abacha was in power then. This was after he had visited many Western countries seeking their support against Abacha's regime. He was arrested and charged with treason and jailed for 4 years until 1995. Let's now cross over fast forward to 2016, and in Gabon. There you go. That is opposition leader Jean Ping, who declared himself president and called for a recount of votes, which confirmed that the incumbent President Ali Bongo had won. However, Ping maintained that, quote unquote, the whole world knew that he was the president. Now, over to Uganda once again, and this is a man that knows what swearing himself into office is all about, and that is none other than Uganda's opposition leader, Kizza Besigye, and we had a one-on-one interview with him earlier. Of course, you talked to my colleague Solomon Serwanja. Let's listen to what he had to say first.
Dr. Besigye, yours has been a struggle, including the defiance campaign that has been at the corner of your political game. Is there any change of strategy that you're looking at?
Well, first of all, I think it is demeaning the efforts of Ugandans to call it my struggle. It is the struggle.
You are the leader.
It is the struggle of the people of Uganda. The people of Uganda have been struggling long before I got into the struggle. They struggled for independence. The people who held them hostage to start with were not Ugandans, they were foreigners. They struggled and overcame those. Then Ugandan groups that took over the weapons of the British started terrorizing them. They have removed several of them in succession. So this is a struggle of the people of Uganda. And yes, the people of Uganda have used different approaches at different times. We did not go to war to gain political independence from the British. It was through non-violent struggle. So if anybody wants to know whether non-violent struggle works, just go back a few years in our history. You will realize that, yes, it won us independence. If you want to know whether armed struggle works in removing a regime, yes, it did so. That's the armed struggle that brought Mr. Museveni to power. But did it transfer power to the people? No. So that is why we have opted not to go back into using guns to overthrow other guns. We want to ensure that our citizens are empowered, are well organized, or have competencies for organizing themselves to work together, to speak together, so that they can then, in a strategic way, without ever repeating the processes we've gone through, now make the military, the guns subordinate to civilian authority. That is the end game. The end game is subordinating military armed groups to civilian authority. And that civilian authority will not subordinate them unless it is well informed, well organized, and motivated. And that is, so our humble contribution is towards that happening, that our population clearly knows what is going on, that it has been empowered with information, that it has organizational competencies in order to act together, and that then it can, through their own confident actions, subordinate the military.
Line with that soundbite from Kizza Besigye, who is the Uganda's opposition leader. Once again, let me reintroduce our guest in studio. We have Professor Oweru Tumbo, who's a political commentator, Dr. Stanley Karanja, who's a governance expert, and now we have a lawyer in studio, that is Kefa Ojijo. Now, Professor Tumbo, let me begin with you once again, and I'm sure you've seen the names that I've just mentioned a while ago with regards to the other presidents in Africa, and they have something in common. They've all been charged with treason and they've been jailed. Do you foresee such situation perhaps happening in Kenya?
Thank you. First and foremost, to me, what is clear is that when you see a series of such activities whereby people are actually protesting against what you would straightforward call election malpractice, they are saying there is injustice. But the people in power, because of the desire to control power or are enjoying power in a manner that they do not want to give way, these people have no choice really than to swear themselves in as a way of protesting. All right? To me, that is one of the non-violent ways of expressing dissatisfaction with an electoral process.
Yes, but Prof, this is something that has happened in DRC, it has happened in Uganda, most of it peacefully in Gabon as well. But once again, all these people who've declared themselves as other presidents have been charged by the government in place for treason and later on, of course, jailed. So do you perhaps see the government taking that route, and perhaps what will that mean for Kenya?
First and foremost, that's really the point I was coming to before you came in. Most governments on our continent are elected by the people, but are self-serving. They are doing things that are not necessarily in the interest of the citizens that voted. If you look clearly at our setup, the Kenyan setup, I do not know whether the government is going to proceed with arresting and charging Raila Odinga with treason or not. But what is quite clear, that there is a legally elected president who has been, through various processes, has been left to run the country. Now, in my view, I see Raila's action as a mode of protest, because the significance of that swearing in by itself in terms of national power play, the impact is relatively small. The reason being that Raila Odinga, although he saw himself up in Uhuru Park, he has no instruments of power. So if the government goes ahead to charge him with the treason, in my view, the man is involved in peaceful protest. He's not involved in treason. You know, there are several stages of legality and illegality before you reach treason. You know, one of them is subversion. You know, you can be involved in an act of subversion which is very close to treason, or you can be involved in public dissent, which in my opinion is what Raila Odinga is expressing. I do not foresee that he will be, he did not, in my view, cross the line all right?
Yes.
And they challenge Uhuru for ownership of the instrument.
And I think, Prof, I think this is where we can bring a lawyer into this conversation, and we have Kefa Ojejo who is with us now. Kefa, good evening. Good to see you once again. And Raila Odinga has been accusing, President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto time and again, accusing them of lacking legitimacy. And perhaps with today's event, how perhaps legal or illegal is it? Let's begin from there.
Yusuf, good evening to you. I'm very glad to be here. First of all, allow me to, condemn the strongest term what has happened to media houses today. That now, quite a number of people in this country may not even be able to view such a healthy discussion we're having today.
Yes, we're going to come to that shortly.
Allow me to say this, that in this country, there are only 4 offenses which are punishable by death. And in fact, going by the current decision of the Supreme Court, then they may be reduced to life sentence. One of them is the offense of murder, the offense of robbery with violence, and attempted robbery with violence, and lastly, the offense of treason. Now, the hardest to prove in terms of elements is the offense of treason. Now, if you look at Section 40 of the Penal Code, even before I go there, is that initially, when they were redrafting this under I remember the Commission by Njonjo, when they were redrafting this Section 40, they did put it in a way that they, the people who thought they were so drunk with power that nobody could interfere with them, that even when you just dream about the president, just dream about taking the seat of the president, or even just think, when you even just think about, the demise of the president, then that amounts to that. Now, this position has been rebutted by a clear case of the Supreme Court of India, in the case of Shah, that set higher standard. But even that, in our own country, Justice Kiage set a higher standard for this. So for you to prove the offense of treason, Yusuf, which is the most important, you will first have to demonstrate that your act have incapacitated the sitting president, that he cannot conduct his duties as the sitting president. Number 2, you have to demonstrate to the court that you have either shared or used the instruments of the government, the instruments of power, to illegally ascend to that position. Now, if you look at those 2 main elements, you realize Raila do not fall within those pitfalls, number 1. Now, it is therefore clear that any offense or any attempt to charge Raila Odinga with the offense of treason will be one, I think, the most defective charge sheet and one a serious joke.
So, Kefa, that begs the question, what was the swearing in all about?
I want you to understand one thing, how clever it was. Now, if you look at the time the President, Uhuru Kenyatta, and Deputy President, when they were taking the oath, both the oath for allegiance and the oath for execution of duties, you realize the wordings of those oaths as required by Section 13 of the Assumption of the Office Act. You realize that when the President was issuing the statement or was taking the oath of allegiance, that oath is defined in a way that it only has 77 words. And you realize that the word republic has been mentioned 4 times. Now, when you come to the oath of office or the oath of assumption of execution of duty, you realize that the whole the statement or the whole oath is structured in a way that it has 79 words. And also a republic mentioned 4 times. Now, if you look at the oath that Raila took, you realize that the wordings are less than that. That is number 1, if I take you to that. Again, if you realize in whose position was Raila swearing, Raila was sworn in as the people's president of the Republic of Kenya. Uhuru Kenyatta took oath as the president of the Republic of Kenya. You see? Now then it drives to, then it gives you now the 2 portions within that the people's president and the president of the Republic of Kenya. This thing may not mean the same thing. And clearly and legally, even when you move to interpretation of the court, then you may not, you may not tie them to have the same meaning. Because even himself, and also look at the procedure and the timing. It requires that when you are taking the oath of office as the president, there is a specified time between, it should run from 10 to around 2 p.m., right? Not past that. We realized Raila Odinga did take his oath at 2:45 p.m. And you also realize that you're required to take that oath together with the deputy president. You realize Raila did take that oath himself. You realize that when you are taking that oath as the president, the chief justice must be there to conduct the process. You see? You realize
not to mention, of course, that his deputy also went missing. Of course, we have a statement there. We're going to read it to our viewers once again. Now, Dr. Stanley, according to KEFA, there's nothing treasonous that, you know, Raila Odinga and his team have committed. So is there any reason, perhaps, for Jubilee and by extension, the president, to worry about today's event?
But you see, it is taking this country aback. It is taking the country continuously into a political situation, while we as a nation, we need to move forward. You will be able to see that now these happenings of swearing in, all these hula baloos are affecting even our other sectors and our other lives. Because now, you can see now they have been sworn as people president. The whole country today was in, see all the behaviors which has happened today. The media houses are losing money. The people today, they didn't go to work as expected. Most of them were in their houses waiting to see what's going to happen. But there was a lot of fear, there was a lot of anxiety. Everybody was asking, what next after Raila getting sworn in? This is not fair, even for Raila to the Kenyans, because there is a constitution. All of us need to agree there is a constitution. There are these courts. After August 8th, they went to court. It was nullified. Then 26th, there it came. Now, why is it that the other side of the divide that believes that it is only them that they can be that they can lead this country? Those are the challenges which is putting the country, rather than us going forward, we are still struggling and thinking, and we are becoming a laughingstock.
Professor Tumbo, do you agree with Dr. Stanley that the opposition is just trying to make the government unstable?
In my opinion, the opposition is trying to make the government uncomfortable because it has not interfered with the government's hold on the instruments of power that enable them to run the country. That is destabilization. The opposition has not engaged in destabilization of government activities.
Yes.
What has actually happened is that the opposition has undertaken a peaceful approach, all right, to protesting about some aspects of our national political body politic that they do not like. I disagree entirely, because when you say trying to make the government unstable, is that the same as saying destabilizing government? In other words, is that the same as saying undermining the government's ability to run the country?
Yeah, so you think that's not the case. Now,
I don't think so.
Let me take you back to what happened in Uganda and these other African countries. Of course, Kizza Besigye did the same thing that Raila did. Nothing happened after that. So what do you think is NASA's next move from now? Did they just decide to perhaps sway in Raila Odinga today and relax?
So far, NASA has not put up a program to suggest that they have the way forward after the swearing in of Raila. But to take a guess, in my opinion, this was one stage in NASA's agenda towards protesting about what has happened in the last 6 months. The way forward at the moment, I doubt if anybody really knows which way they are going.
Yes.
But if you look at the examples that have happened in other countries, where the government has not fallen backwards to prove its muscle or to peddle its muscle, nothing has really happened. Where the government has gotten a bit crazy and gone out to eliminate the opposition through the courts, the people have remained in jail, the government has remained in power, and the level of discontent, the level of argument, the level of disapproval of government's conduct has more or less remained the same. So in my opinion, it's doubtful whether NASA has you could call it a master plan of the way forward from now.
Yes.
What I think they are going to do is to watch and see how the people react to this, and then construct the way forward.
Kefa, I'll hear your view about that shortly, but for now, let's talk about dialogue. Of course, the European Union have called for dialogue between the opposition and the Jubilee Party. There are also other individuals, among them the Third Way Alliance leader Kuro Okoto today spoke to KTN, and he also talked about the need to have dialogue. Let's listen to what he had to say first.
Heal as a country. And I still challenge President Uhuru must make the first move and say, guys, let's have a conversation about our country. I think the government must lead, and let's not reduce this conversation or dialogue, if you like, to just a clique of individuals. We have the business community who today, because of this political uncertainty, are losing billions of Kenyan shillings. And so are we as the people of Kenya losing taxes. We have the civil society. We have the ordinary Kenyan. We should be able to have now a conversation about, and I think I challenge President Uhuru Kenyatta to even invite dialogue, including NASA. Let them come to this national dialogue. We can have it at KICC, at Bomas of Kenya. Let's talk about what ails this country. How do we heal this country? It's not about assuaging or massaging individual egos of a few individuals. That I totally agree with. And I also want to challenge you, Ben Agina, and the rest of the media. When you talk about dialogue, let's stop reducing it to just Jubilee and NASA. We also have Third Way Alliance Kenya, which is a legally registered political party.
Kefa, those who might say that comment is past its shelf life because the swearing in of Raila Odinga as the people's president has already happened. Do you think dialogue might have made today's situation avoidable?
Yusuf, without any doubt. First, allow me to say that I don't like commenting about Kuro Court. With all due respect, but he's one leader that I've never taken seriously. I've never seen any consistency on him. He's one person who says one thing today and the other. So I don't even take what he says seriously. But the reality is that there is need for dialogue. In fact, even before...
So you agree with him on that at least? Yes, carry on.
Yes, I agree about the dialogue.
Yes.
Even before we reach where we are today, about taking the oath of office by Raila Odinga, the main driving factor has always been discussion, has always been dialogue, has always been people sitting down and agreeing on the way forward. Because the truth remains, even if Jubilee wants to remain in denial and the president wants to remain in denial, the reality is, and today people have watched it at the Uhuru Park, that the country is divided and there's a larger section of this country that do not recognize the leadership that we have. But now, how do we have to harmonize this? We have to harmonize this when we draw those people that we feel oppose us the most, the people we feel that our ideas are split with theirs, sit down and agree on the way forward. Because after all, what Kenyans want to see is leadership that, pulls from all the sides. They want to see, a kind of leadership that reflects all the ideology, reflects all what they believe in. That is one. But you also ask a very important question that I would like to touch on. You ask a very important question, that what is next after taking the oath of office for Raila, what is next? Then, Yusuf, you'll realize now, this is what now the principle of self-determination starts from there. Believe me or not, if you look at it, 70% chances are that now that Raila has taken now the oath of office as the people's president, what happens next? Then you start assuming that as the people's president, you want to exercise your authority and live within the principle and aspiration of your subjects. But remember, we also have a sitting president, legally sworn in as the president. Then what is going to happen? He will now want to lead these people, and this other person want to lead these people. Then we are going back again to the debate of secession, which is likely to take a major impact.
Precisely, that's why dialogue is needed in this country. Dr. Stanley, I'm sure you've seen a significant majority of this country. Of course, they don't believe in the government of the day, and they have their own reasons. They're all seeking for electoral justice. They're looking for an all-inclusive sort of a government. Do you think the government should at least sit down and listen to their plea?
We must be able to differentiate some key things here. There is what's called political dialogue. And in our constitution, the way it is enshrined, that happens through the ballot. That is for sure. That's the system set. But again, we must go to understand Kenyans, all of us, what is ailing? What is this that is disturbing Kenyans psychologically, in their psyche? What is the problem? We must address to the issues. Because, look here, Yusuf, and my fellow panelists. We had the issue of power and the presidency. Then we came with the new constitution. Then we had the devolution. Then this power has still not gone for people to go back to the governors. They are still concentrating on the issue of the presidency. Now the country, again, to talk about secession is where we need even what Okuru Okot is talking about dialogue. It's not only dialogue about political parties, because the dialogue of politics is what happens through the ballot. We need to become sincere, all of us. We need to enlighten Kenyans. What is this? How shall we look in 2030, in 2050? What are the systems and the structures do we need to put in place? Because if you go down to the villages and be able to get the bright Kenyans, they will tell you here it's issues about some key families, about some key political. Now they're saying, Okuru Okot is insinuating, we have the issue of the government, that is Jubilee, we have the issue of NASA, and he's including his third way alliance. We need all Kenyans to be inclusive and be shown the path. Well, I agree. The only person who maybe come and be able, and he's doing it, maybe in his big four, but he needs maybe additions to include that the people, remember in Vision 2030, we have the political pillar, social pillar, and economic pillar. Where are we ailing? We, all Kenyans, we are focusing on the political pillar. And that's where the problem is as Kenya. We need to have dialogue, dialogue with ourselves. All Kenyans, 45 million, 50 million Kenyans, we need to be in the dialogue.
And, speaking about dialogue, Prof, this is a request that has been made by by the opposition on several occasions. The EU also came in at some point. They discussed Kenya in their parliament some time back, calling on these two main protagonists to sit down and talk. But it has never happened. I mean, do you think we still have time to do that?
There is always time for dialogue.
Yes.
Dialogue must always be on the table. However, it's extremely important in the Kenyan case to understand that the central issues that would enable the country to get out of the current morass are anchored on history. Now, this country was structured in such a way that the first president, instead of using wisdom, he used material welfare and gain to establish, monopoly. Now, what has happened all along, even the second president and the third president, the attitude became monopoly. In other words, once you get control of the instruments of power and you get control of the resources, that is, you get control of security and you get control of money, the rest of the people can go to hell. So the dialogue that is required is not about just electoral injustice. It's about the fundamental existence of this country, whereby we need to turn around the winner-takes-all mentality, where there is a sense of entitlement in one part of the country and another sense of subjugation in another country. The issue about self-determination would not arise if the simple things of who deserves what. We can refer to the Constitution as many times as we want, but as we know, every political alliance refers the Constitution to its own convenience. What we need to do is discuss the fundamental foundations of our country to try and assess whether the way it is structured, the way it operates, whether it is in an atmosphere that allows everybody to belong. You see, one of the challenges we have right now is that it's important for everybody to remember that, to be a Kenyan, all right, people can refuse to be Kenyans, but they can't refuse to be their tribal groups because you are born in that tribe. What we need to discuss is how do we coexist with each other, irrespective of what rules are on the table.
Yes, I think, so I think you've delivered your point. Now we have 3 minutes or so, and I'd like to hear a final comment on this. Let me begin with you, Kefa. Of course, you've witnessed the media shutdown today. That's still in effect. Apparently, we have like about 3,000 or 4,000 viewers on YouTube. Instead, we're supposed to have millions who are supposed to watch this program. So what is your view on what the government did today?
Yusuf, it's very unfortunate that this has to happen at this time of moment when we have the new constitution and we've traversed a long distance. different. We've moved from ages to become where we are right now. I mean, these are things that used to happen to this country 20 years back. And if somebody is taking us back, it's very unfortunate. It's really the worst that has ever happened to this nation. Allow me to say this, that the Communications Authority of Kenya, it's a statutory body that is created under the Information and Communication Act. That is Cap 411A. Of the laws of Kenya. And if you look at Section 5B of that act, it clearly tells you that the Communication Authority of Kenya ought to act independently without, direction or supervision from somebody else. But the action we have seen today, Yusuf, the action we have seen today is a direct dictatorship, a direct, directory from individuals with self-interest that do not want, that want the media freedom to be curtailed. You see, you cannot use your own powers to curtail what is, clearly entrenched in Article 33 and Article 34, the freedom of press. I mean, Kenyans were not fools to create a whole article discussing the freedom of press and why it is necessary that this country ensure we have the freedom of press. Because any country where you kill the press and you kill the civil society is not a country.
Of course, those who are saying as, government move to infringe on people's rights. Dr. Stanley, you have like 30 seconds. I'd really like to hear your view on this, very briefly.
It's very interesting. I can also be able to put spanner into the works and be able to say sometimes we Kenyans, we are getting so much glued to the television. Very sorry to the media houses. And you'll be able to see, for example, it is going around people saying those who wanted to go to Uhuru Park were there physically. And you can see, even the other day there was a national function. People never went. People decided to use their television. At least I appreciate you can be able to see how many people are on YouTube. Unlike other parameters which cannot be looked upon.
Yes,
but I agree, by and large, it is the media houses are in business. But again, on the agreement on how to deliver, you know better. And I think it is always good as business people and part of the stakeholders in government is good to agree way forward and what to cover appropriately so that we can move on as Kenyans.
Well said. Thank you very much, Dr. Stanley Karanja, the governance expert, for your input. Professor Uritumbo, I also have been speaking to earlier as a political commentator, as well as Kefa Ojijo, who is a lawyer and doubles up as a political analyst. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your input. Now, before we wrap up the show this evening, let's take a look at the proverb of the day. A very interesting proverb there from Igbo. I believe that is in Nigeria. And before we wrap up, we did ask you on our Twitter poll earlier if you think Raila Odinga's swearing in will have any geopolitical significance in Africa. Let me quickly go through some of the feedback here, like one or two. And Ibnato says, certainly it will appear in children's storybooks as one of the most hilarious stories in Kenya's history. That's all, no other significance. And Kenya One says, do you think that your shutdown will have any significance in Kenya? It's an interesting comment. Let me just take one more. Dennis Rock says, it will depend on what happens after the swearing in. Otherwise, it was a bold move that distinguishes him, that is Raila Odinga, as a man among boys and depicts his love for this great nation. Of course, it is 2 minutes past 11, and that means we have to wrap up the show. Many thanks for watching. My name is Yusuf Ibrahim. Have a very good night.